Husband and wife, Kit and Helen Williams, each has a growing reputation in the world of art. Their work differs, but is in many ways complementary. And they have contrasting artistic backgrounds. Kit is self-taught, but Helen had a formal training before teaching art for a time. Kit's latest creation, a mechanical sculpture, begins life on the drawing board.
All pieces of work start with a drawing, and this is the most important part of every piece of work. All working out has to be done on the drawing. All mistakes have to be made on the drawing, because if a mistake crops up halfway through a very complicated piece of mechanical sculpture, then there's no going back. You've got to cure it then. In the work, it is necessary to use lots of different processes, and sometimes I find that I want to do something and I haven't the machine or the knowledge of how to do it, and it means that I've jolly well got to learn it or make the machine. And in fact, when I needed a lathe, I had to make one out of an old sewing machine and a wheelbarrow and some odds and ends, and a very simple lathe was made for the turning up of one ball. This piece of mechanism is the joining together of a part of a Volkswagen carburetor and a clock mechanism, and in combining the two pieces of machinery, I have a little device which is temperature sensitive, extremely sensitive to very slight changes in temperature, and then by connecting it up to a spherical painting, it means that as there are slight temperature changes during the day, the little spherical painting will go round and round all by itself, and it will never need anybody to turn it round or to push it round. It will just be going round all by itself all the time. It will have a life of its own. In making the work, with cabinet work, it's necessary to make jigs, to bend pieces of wood, and one has to steam them so as they're bent to the right angles. And then the whole thing has to be glued together, and it's necessary to dye the glue to the right colour of the wood as well, so as if there's any glue showing in the joints, it will appear to be wood because it's the same colour as the wood. Gluing is a very once-off sort of job. You've got to do it right there and then. You can't do it again without making the whole thing again. One has to leave the glue overnight to set with some sort of clamp on it to hold it in position, and then the next day one comes down to see that it all has set, and hopefully it has. One doesn't want the thing, little bits dropping out when the whole thing's made, so you have to check that everything has stuck properly. In my work, everything has to be able to come to bits as well, so as if in the future anything goes wrong, someone can repair it. I guarantee all my work for the rest of my life. If anything goes wrong with it, then I guarantee to repair it. And I can't go beyond my life, but I hope that another craftsman, if anything goes wrong after my life, will also be able to repair it. It's necessary to make the thing so as you can get into it and do things to it. By drawing on tracing paper, one can compose pictures very quickly by drawing the different component parts of a picture on little bits of tracing paper and then shifting them around to fit together, so you can see each piece through other pieces of tracing paper. And then you can put the whole thing together, and by putting one piece of tracing paper over the top, compose the whole picture. When one has finished the drawing, you can transfer it onto the metal by using the same tracing paper. And it's possible to whiten metal with something like emulsion paint and then use it as a piece of paper. And once the drawing is on the metal, then by using tools you can cut the metal away and drill the metal until you've got what you want. I prefer to use hand tools than electric tools. I don't like the noise of electric tools mainly, and you don't have the control. I suppose one would with proper machine tools, but the little electric hand tools don't seem to me to be as good as old-fashioned just manual hand tools. In fact, some of the tools I even make myself. Metal finishing is always a problem. One has to clean the metal so precisely clean before you can oxidize it or plate it or anything else to it. And I normally use Vim. One has to sort of really scour the thing and make it absolutely clean. Plays havoc with one's fingers, but it certainly cleans the metal. In this case, I want to oxidize the metal. I want to change its color. The surface of the metal can be changed by a process of oxidization. Oxidization happens naturally. That's rust and things like that. But I want to do it very quickly here and subject the piece of metal to what, under normal conditions, might take hundreds of years to change its color. Also, I want to add artificial colors to the surface of the metal by treating it with different chemicals. I never know quite how these things are going to turn out. My knowledge of chemistry isn't all that it could be, and a lot of it is just experimentation, it seems every time to come out completely different, and I am as baffled as anybody else that it should work. The formulas that I read in books never work, and I suppose it's probably the way I do it. And every time I do it, it comes out different. You just have to wait and watch and see what happens. Painting is a very accurate thing. There's no chemistry here. You're working between eye and hand, and this is where I can really come into my own as far as fineness and accuracy is concerned. It takes many years to be able to have that control. Some people say I must use terribly tiny brushes, but you can't choose brushes all that small because they won't hold the amount of paint that you need. It's the pressure at which the tip touches the surface of the painting. Quite a big brush can have a fine tip, and if you only just touch the tip onto the painting, then you can make a fine line. And it's this pressure that's important. Paint must flow all the time, and you must move it around as if you're spreading tiny slices of bread with butter. Every piece of work has to be titled, and merely for reference, and the title of this piece of work is Orrery to a Minor Planet, and it means very little to anybody else but me, but it is a title.
I paint with gouache, which is a water-based paint, unlike Kit, who uses oil paint. And I paint on a variety of surfaces. In this particular piece, I'm working on a very smooth white illustration card. And because the paint is water-based, the pictures have to be protected and put behind glass in the frame. But the surface of the painting mustn't touch the glass. So I need to cut out a mount of card which is stuck onto the picture and protects it from actually touching the glass. This enables me to use very elaborate shapes, and these are incorporated with the pictures. I use embroideries in the spaces behind the mounts because using the different holes cut out, one can fit a particular paper behind or a piece of fabric behind. And here I'm using real silk thread on a satin background. I use bridal fabric to sew on. My pictures are involved a lot with gardens, trees, flowers, and a profusion of floral ornament. The embroidery can easily be taken about when we sit outside in the evening, or perhaps if we go to other people's houses, whereas the painting obviously can only be done in the studio. I'm interested in the juxtaposition of the formal, organized, stylized garden and a free element where the plants can come out of their structural shapes and be themselves. I use 2 or 3 of my girlfriends as models for the girls in my pictures, although not all of the paintings are figurative. And a typical modelling session, we would go out into the fields and take a lot of our pretty dresses, my dresses and the girls as well, and arrange them in the sort of poses that I would most like to paint, and then take a whole film of photographs, choosing afterwards the best one to work from.